Yahweh, Alam, Shalom, righteous family. Welcome back to True Talk. And when you tell a half truth, you tell a lie. I want y'all to hear this for a minute.
It's a wild story. I learned this past Juneteenth of a story that's true, and there was a black man who was in South Carolina during slavery who somehow got granted his freedom by his so-called master. And when his master granted him the freedom, he also gave him a plot of land. Now, it turns out this brother was brilliant. He had a good eye, a good knack for farming. And he farmed this plot of land very successfully and made a lot of money. And this is where the story gets crazy. When he got all that money, this nigga bought some slaves. Have you ever heard this before? This is a true story. Not only was he a slave owner, he became a slave breeder and employed tactics that were so cruel, even white slave owners were like, yo, my man. He was a wild dude, but he did it just because that's what successful people did at the time, and he just wanted to be down. What a fucking tragedy.
So let's start right there. So actually, the man was not black. He was mixed, and his daddy was white. And if you are what your daddy are, he was a white man, not a black man. You know how they used to rape black women back then and have illegitimate mixed kids from them. And these are what we would call a lot of time the house Negroes. If they was mixed, lighter skin, they would get treated better. They'll get to stay in the big house with master because those was those people children. They was the master children. So I want to bring clarity to this because people would say, "Oh, black people used to own slaves," and they'll say, "Well, back then, every slave was not every black person not enslaved. During slavery, there was some black men or black people that owned land." And when I went to look into it, I was like, "Oh snap, they all right. They was black people that owned land during slavery. There was black people that owned slaves during slavery." And then when I look even deeper, it says they'll use word like a mulatto. First they'll say a person of color, and then they'll say a mulatto, and then they came out and when I looked up the word mulatto or whatever, it was a mixed race. So what happened was the slave master will rape the slave women, have children from them, and those children will be granted freedom. So when people say, it was this one slave I looked up, and it's like his master when he died, his master gave him land. His master loved him so much. That's what they said. The white man loved his slave so much that when he died, he set his slave free and gave his slave land. And that's the story that was going around. But when I actually looked into the story was true. But what they don't tell you was this slave that he gave freedom and land was his son. There was a case where they said a black man fought for land that his slave master gave him and won in court during that time. And they was like, oh, things ain't what it seemed. People make like it was so one sided. And what about this black man who slave fought for his slave master land and was granted that? But what they don't tell you, this black man or this mixed man fought for this land because he said, I got right to this land because this is my daddy land. Even though we know back then it was the one uh, drop rule. So if you had one drop of black blood, you was considered black. But this was a white man with a black mother, a mixed man, but his daddy was white. So you are who your daddy is. It was a white man, and I'm pretty sure that he looked at black but at heart and everything, he was a white man. And he went to court and he said, "Hey, this is my father. I got the rights to the land." And yes, he won because after his father died, the father set him free. His own father set him free and gave him land. So when we hear these stories about slaves being set free and slaves owning other slaves and slaves being able to own land, what they don't tell you is these are the mixed people. These are the people that was considered family. They was not treated as black. They was the house nigga. That's where the whole house nigga or Uncle Tom came from because even though they looked at black, their allegiance was with their family. Their allegiance was with their daddy. Their daddy took care of them. They'll say, "I ain't gotta be out here with y'all Negro." Even though they looked at black, they'll say, "My daddy is master. I ain't gotta be out here with y'all Negro. My daddy gonna give me some new shoes. When y'all eat, y'all gonna get the pig feet and the slop. I'm gonna sit at the table. I'm gonna eat good with my mother and my daddy. I mean, with my daddy and my stepmom." Now, of course, they was mistreated. Like the wife probably mistreated them and didn't like them, and certain people in society seen them as black and mistreated them. But when they find out that uh, white man Johnson was his daddy, they treated him a little better. So we must tell the truth because, and I'm disappointed in Dave. You know, I was with Dave when he escaped, went to Africa, and supposed to left all the money behind. But anybody that don't got a sister or Hebrew sister for a wife, I don't care. I look at them side eyes. If you're not marrying a Hebrew black woman, I don't consider you my people. I'm not giving you props up. Because you cannot say you love your people and love yourself if you don't get a black woman and produce with a black woman. But then you want the benefit of a black man and want to be treated as a black man. I say, you cannot talk black but lay white. Like who's your counterpart is make a bit different. That's your other half. How can you be a black man in this world and go back and talk to a Chinese or a white woman and not be influenced, not be compromised, not be biased? But nevertheless, just wanted to bring this forth. Whenever you hear stories about black people being set free and owning land, doing slavery time, and know that these was mixed uh, people, and these people had statue. They was had what you call, I don't want to say royalty, but yeah, they was if they daddy was the Mrs. Johnson that owned 12 slaves that was well known in whatever town they was and owned a couple of farms, just by him being that slave oldest son, even though he was a so-called black man and was treated some type of way, he was treated different than the average black person and was given privilege than the other black person. That's why they was willing to turn in slaves and tell on slaves. You know, they make like, oh, it was just the light skinned slaves stayed in the house and the light skinned person was the house. No, why was they light skinned? That's half truth. The truth is that was the children of the masters that was telling on the other slaves. And because they looked like us, they was able to move around us and even infiltrate us. And when we got ready to run away or do something, they'll snitch on us. And we still got Negroes like this today. That they grew up, they may be all black, but they grew up around all white people in a white neighborhood, went to all white school. So they got some type of hate for themselves. The perception that they perception of life is not like most black people that grew up in the hood in the struggle or just grew up a certain way. These are the Candace Owens. These are the raccoons that's on the internet today. They think the worst about their own people. They're doing slavery time, yeah, they will sell you out and tell on you. So no, these are not our people. This is not a black man that owned slaves. This was a colored white man. A white man that looked at black, because you are who your father is. Daddy was white. So even though he had kinky hair and dark skin, he was a white man with black in him. And for the most part, he had all the systems. The system was behind him. Power was behind him. And money was behind him. So let's just get that straight. Uh, we got to bring clarity to history and stories like this. But as always, let Yah be true and every man a lie. Till next time, Shalom.